And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis showing closed off now, at least some ice to a certain extent here across, from the Arctic coast here right on up to the main ice field there just to the north. Still some open water there north of Point Barrow, and that area expands here quite a bit, but diminishing there southeast of Wrangel Island, and now ice all the way across from the Russian coast into Point Hope and Cape Lisburne and that area there. And for the tonight's weather, some light snow continues. Kobuk Valley into Selawik, Kotzebue, on up along the northwest coast there. Look for continued flurries for the central and eastern Arctic coast. Areas of light snow continuing there. Portions of the Tanana Valley, Delta Junction down in toward the Alaska Range, but south of the mountains, mostly clear with dry conditions. Winds not too bad. Down to Kodiak Island, Copper River Basin, still some shower activity remaining near or off the coast of the North Gulf Coast, but Middleton Island looking at showers, maybe even up in toward Yakutat, could see a shower or two, but basically dry for the southeast coast. And this week trough right through here bringing some precipitation, light precipitation to St. Lawrence Island down across the Pribilofs to the eastern Aleutians. Next front pushing eastward here brings rain into the Adak and Atka area from Amchitka Island, and then tomorrow that pushes eastward, bringing a chance of moisture to the southwest coast. Rain for Nunivak Island and the Pribilofs earlier in the day, and some rain and snow for the St. Lawrence Island area. And a warm front spreading some rain up into the west central Aleutians. Otherwise, low pressure continuing here in the eastern Gulf of Alaska. That keeps a threat of showers over mainly the central and southern southeast coast. This stronger system here passing by to the south, and still a lot of sunshine. A little breezy here for south central Alaska, but again, winds not all that strong, and some light snow for the eastern Alaska Range, northeastern Copper River Basin. Again, over the east side here, basically dry with partly to mostly cloudy skies over the interior, but again, mostly sunny south and east of the Alaska Range. And then for Wednesday, this front washes out completely, just leaving some light snow behind over the lower Yukon River Valley area, southern Seward Peninsula up towards St. Lawrence Island. Fair over the central interior. Chance of light snow here again from the eastern Copper River Basin, and rain or snow showers around Yakutat, but that moisture extends all the way up again across the eastern Alaska Range toward Eagle. And still a chance of rain here with this low south of the Queen Charlotte's there over the southern panhandle, or showers, but dry with some clearing to the north. And the bigger storm, again, this warm front here, and the low tracks northeastward. Pretty good, that should bring some gale force winds into the eastern Aleutians ahead of that front, with warm front rains, warmer conditions, and rain spreading all the way up toward Nunivak Island by late afternoon. And for the coastal water forecast here for the southern southeast coast, we've got, or for the south coast of the Panhandle, look for southeast winds 10 to 15 knots. The north coast here, east winds 15 to 25 knots. Lynn Canal Glacier Bay north at 10. Same forecast for Stevens Passage, light winds out of the north, but Clarence Strait southeast at 20 knots. And then for the day on Wednesday, Clarence Strait, north winds 15 knots, north winds 20 knots for the central and northern inside channels. North at 15 here on the south coast, central coast north at 20 with seas around 8 feet. And for the north coast here, variable winds at 15 knots. Prince William Sound, north winds 15 knots, eastern North Gulf Coast, north to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, north at 20 for the western North Gulf Coast. And Cook Inlet, northeast winds at about 10 knots, 2 to 3 foot seas. And gale force winds still in the forecast here up to 40 knots for Kamishak Bay out of the northwest with 10-foot seas, 35 knot northwest winds for the Barren Islands. And then those come down to small craft advisories on Wednesday, northwest winds through this area at 25 to 30 knots. Variable winds at 10 for Cook Inlet, north at 20 for Prince William Sound, northwest 25 for the western North Gulf Coast, and north to northeast at 20 knots there for the east side. And for Kodiak Island for tomorrow, northwest winds 25 to 35 knots with the gales in Shelikof Strait. Alaska Peninsula, west to northwest winds 20 to 25 knots, north at 20 for Bristol Bay. And then for the day on Wednesday for Kodiak Island, looking at east winds, or I'm sorry, west winds at 20 to 25 knots, west of 20, also 25 for Bristol Bay, and south to southwest winds at 20 to 25 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, southwest winds 30 knots with seas up to 10 feet. Gale warnings for Adak and Atka with that front approaching, southwest winds 35 knots. And for the western Aleutians, west to southwest winds 25 to 35 knots. And for the day on Wednesday, western Aleutians, south to north winds at 25 knots, and northeast to southeast winds there just west of Adak at 30 to 35 knots. Otherwise, good gales here for Adak and Atka. In toward Nikolsky at 40 to 45 knots. On Alaska Island, south winds at 35 knots. And then for the southwest coast tomorrow, southeast winds 15 to 25 knots, southeast at 25 St. Lawrence Island, and back down to 15 knots there in Norton Sound. Gale warnings for St. Matthew Island, south winds 35 knots and about 30 knots from the south for the Pribilofs. And for Wednesday, south winds 25 knots for St. Paul and St. George, seas still up there around 11 feet, and 20-foot seas with 20-knot winds from the south for St. Matthew Island. And the southwest coast, south to southwest winds 15 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas, southeast at 20 for St. Lawrence Island. Small craft advisories for Norton Sound for southeasterlies at 25. Eastern Boulevard Sea Coast, northeast at 10 to 15 for tomorrow, east at 15 for the Central Coast. Small craft advisories, western Arctic coast, east winds 25 knots, seas at about 4 feet, and east to southeast at 15 for the Chukchi Sea. Then for Wednesday, winds laying down here on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east at 10 knots there with ice-covered areas there now. So no sea heights there, but still about 3 feet in the Central Coast with a 15-knot wind. Small craft advisories for the western Arctic coast, east at 25 in the Chukchi Sea. East winds 15 to as high as 25 knots.